Good evening, everybody. My name's Ali Brown and I'm the FASD project manager from FASD Hub Scotland. And welcome to our first Wednesday webinar of 2021. This is our season 2, if you like, and we are really excited to have with us this evening Shushma, who's come to talk to us about her book that she's written about her and a little girl who has FASD. And we're very much going to do this as a chat between two new friends, we were saying earlier, a bit like the Listening Project, if any of you have ever heard that on BBC Radio 4. So FASD Hub Scotland is a support service for parents, carers of young people and children who've got prenatal alcohol, history of prenatal alcohol exposure or an FASD diagnosis. And we're a tiered service. We are hosted and managed by Adoption UK in Scotland. We are all employed by Adoption UK in Scotland, and I've worked for them now for 5 years. And I'm an adoptive parent myself, and I've got 3 children, one of whom has an FASD diagnosis. So if you live in Scotland and you'd like to access our services, then please visit us either on our YouTube channel, on any of our social media, or through the Adoption UK website, and you can click on FASD and find out more. So that's my sales pitch over as to who we are and what we do. And so I'm excited to welcome Shushma to our webinar this evening and the conversation. And I'm just going to open up and just ask her to tell us a little bit about herself and her family unit. Over to you, Shushma. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. First of all, I just want to say thank you for having me on here.
You're welcome.
And so I'm Shushma, and I live with my parents and my older brother, a year older than me. So I'm a single parent, but I don't see myself as a single parent because I'm very lucky that my family are very much involved in helping me look after Layla. Yeah, so that's a little bit about us. So Layla is 7, and she came to us from birth, really, when she was 9 days old. But we had a phone call 2 months before she was born, so we were kind of on standby because my parents foster, so we kind of foster as a family.
So, and that was how you first sort of came to introduce you to your family unit, wasn't it, through fostering?
Through fostering, yes.
Yeah. And then you later on decided to apply for adoption, which was quite a long journey, reading, although familiar maybe to some of us as well.
Yeah, I think for me I didn't see it as long, just because obviously Layla was already with us.
Yeah.
And things were just happening while she was with us. So like the assessment for the adoption, and we had only just become foster carers. So it was only 6 months into it when Layla had come to us. And I think for me, I was lucky because I asked for the same assessment social worker who did the fostering, because I knew when she assessed us for fostering, she did adoption. So I asked if I could have her.
Yeah.
So it just meant I didn't have to repeat my whole history.
Which is always a good thing in the adoption assessment process. Yeah. Definitely having adopted twice myself, then yeah, there was a lot of repeating myself. Yeah, my name's still Ali, that's right. Still born on that date. Yeah. Brilliant. So what brought you to decide to write this book?
The book, I had no plans of writing a book, so I'll just say that. So it came about because of COVID. So obviously COVID has brought a lot of changes. For us, we had to shield as a family because Layla has cystic fibrosis also. So for 4.5 months we weren't allowed to leave the house, and I already knew, well, Layla, so she went to a mainstream school and she had a full-time one-to-one and any education healthcare plan. And during COVID, so during shielding, she started thriving. And I knew I would have difficulties when she gets to secondary school because it's completely different with different classrooms and stuff, but I wasn't expecting it now. And when I realized she was thriving and speaking to the professionals on the phone, they were like, oh, don't worry, come September, she'll be fine, send her back to school, she's picked it all up and kind of it's all fixed. And I thought, do you know what, my friends, actually, if the professionals see like this, I know even my friends, most of them don't really know Layla, like truly Layla.
Yeah.
With the difficulty she goes and what goes on behind the scene. And so I thought, you know what, for them to understand why I've come to the decision of home education, I wrote blogs on each of the things, all the different additional needs that she has. Because originally it was only meant to be one blog about home education.
Okay.
and then I thought, actually that doesn't quite cut it, because actually I did my own homework about home education. So even though I used to teach, it was a complete eye-opener for me.
Yeah.
About how it all works and what's involved.
Uh-huh.
The whole, when I say what it involves, I mean like how to deregister her and all that.
Yeah.
So I did my homework and thought, okay, that's gonna be a blog on that. But actually, in order for my friends to understand how I got there, I need to talk about the different additional needs that Layla has. And so I then wrote a blog in each one. So fetal alcohol spectrum disorder being the main one, and then her anxiety, her cystic fibrosis, and her sensory processing. And so I just, like one night I thought, right, I'll just write about this one and see how it goes. So I kind of just write the reason why I've decided to home educate Layla, part 1, Layla and her fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And then I wrote that, and that was quite well received. So I thought, okay, right, let's go on to number 2. And then I wrote 9 blogs, and at the end of it, I said, this is the last one. And also I've got friends who are in the education system or OTs or therapies, and they were like, I think you should write a book on it, because I think it will help people understand, because I didn't know, and if I don't know, there's a lot of other people that don't know. And so I was thinking about it, and then I thought, okay, what have I got to lose? You know, I want to create awareness, that I really want to push it out there. No one really, you know, we know as families know, but people who have been affected by it wouldn't really know. So I thought, okay, let's do it. And had no plan, but I thought, let's just do it.
So the biggest part of writing the book really was a real like cathartic thing for yourself. You never set out to write a book. You set out to write a blog. To just tell people about what it's like when you think about home educating. For some people that are listening tonight will know that I'm a home educator as well. So we've struck gold, the two of us. We've got kids that have got FASD. We're crazy mums that home educate, and we've both been shielding during COVID, so we have much in common. With children with additional needs. It's been really interesting, I can assure you. So
yeah, exactly. And this was never part of the plan. Like when I was first told we have to shield as a family, I was petrified inside, because every day after school we'd be like, Layla had her OT or her swimming, or she goes to the gym once a week and has a personal trainer because of her cystic fibrosis, and arts and crafts. And I was thinking, how are we going to keep her entertained? But actually it helped me realize, actually, even though I know that this is Layla's safe home, and I knew that school were putting a lot of demands on her, like the school system, not the school, that's unfair, the school system, because I could see, obviously, when she was in the holiday, she was very different, but I didn't realize how much of a difference and the impact it was having on her, to be fair.
So what are those differences that you've seen? What are those, like, you know, that's what people would, I'm sure, love to hear about this evening. What are those differences?
Her anxiety she gets it, but it's reduced quite significantly.
Mm-hmm.
Her worries, her eating has been throughout her whole life, ever since she was born. We've had eating problems drinking, even her milk, like she had to go to the hospital every week to be weighed because she was so underweight, and she just wasn't taking it. And so she's never had dinner. So she has a feeding peg. She's never had dinner, and she has dinner, and that is a huge achievement.
That's huge, isn't it? Huge achievement.
Exactly. You know, she was never like this whole sensory thing. So not baked beans. She's never like dipped chips and baked beans. She doesn't add chips. She has chips and baked beans now. And don't get me wrong, she might not have it next time, the baked beans, but I don't care, because she's tried it. And she might have it in a month's time. But so that's been a huge difference. She's sleeping more better. She's learning. So this time last year, Layla wouldn't even touch a book, because even though she loved books when she was little, when she went to school, the books were actually, I'm stupid, I'm thick, I can't read, but my peers can. So it's a real negative thing for her. But now every night, right, what book am I going to choose and who am I going to read it with? She loves reading now, and and now she can read like 3-letter words. She can read words that have 3 letters in it.
Yeah.
And even if she doesn't know it, she will guess, whereas before she wouldn't even try. She'd be like, nope. And then all the behaviors would come out, and all the all the negative stuff, because it was her trying to deal with it. So people would, in her head, people would think, I'm stupid, so actually I'm not even gonna try because I'll just fail.
Yeah. And I mean, we always hear that, the behaviors of communication, isn't it? But I think when you see those things in your kids, you see that it's coming from a place of anxiety, or it's coming from a place of, shame, or it's coming from a place of, actually, this is really difficult for my brain is viewing the world in a different way to other people, and it's taken me a lot of effort to sit here and just be able to sit here and concentrate, and then to be able to sit here, concentrate and process all that information. That's challenging. So I can't do that for very long. I definitely recognize that in my child, that 10-15 minutes, that's like we're doing so well if we've managed to focus for that amount of time, on a book. That would be big.
She says it now. She'll say I'm not having a good day, or she'll say I'm struggling, I need help. Because I think over this whole year, like when she does it, we say, like, what do we need to say? We'll just remind her, what can I say? I need help, or I'm not having a good day. And so we've been laminating a lot of things. So we've got a calendar, and where she does the days. So it was one, for me, it was life skills. I really want her to learn life skills, rather than actually, yes, she can do her times table, or she can do this. And I thought, actually, I want her to learn her date of birth, because I know when she goes to the hospital or wherever, first thing everyone asks, what's your date of birth?
Yeah.
And she'd look at me and think, oh no. And that anxiety, and professionals don't realize the pressure that they put on our children, and they don't mean to, but I used to see it on her. And so I thought, well, that will get her to learn the days of the week, the month, and the numbers, and we'll make it fun. But now she's kind of having a wobbly day. She will actually mix it up on purpose, and that's her way of telling us, actually, it's going to be a wobbly day today, because instead of the month, it says sunny on it, or instead of the date, it says the month on it. So that's her way of telling us, actually, I'm feeling a bit shaky or a bit wobbly today, because in my head, and what she says, my head's all wobbly and messed up.
So that's a great strategy that you've just sort of alluded to there as well, about using visuals.
Yeah.
So is there any other kind of real good strategy things that you can share with people tonight?
We use a lot of visuals. So just there's a lot of things around like even in the living room. So emotions of how she's feeling, happy, sad, angry. She doesn't even have to say it. She can just point to it.
Mm-hmm.
She's got her weighted blanket, which, so it's just things lying around. It has to be in the same place so she knows she can go to it.
Yeah.
She's also got slowly we've had to introduce this, but like a really cheap MP3 player, which was like £14, and it's all her, I've loaded all her favorite music. So now she'll say, actually, I need to just chill out, and that means she needs a weighted blanket and her earphones and listening. We've got a little box with her little sensory things in it, so it might
that's
be,
cool.
Like
what things do you have in your box? In our box, we've got like chewy. My son's quite oral, so we've got some really cool chewy things. Because for a while it was a 4-year-old who still had a dummy, which I didn't really have a problem with, but most of the rest of the population did. So so this is it just looks like a key. But so that's one of the things he really loves. And similarly, a weighted blanket. One of the other things he really likes, he's really into deep pressure. So we've got a swing in the middle of our living room, one of those ones that you can climb right into, and it's like sort of a cocoon around him.
That's nice.
Headphones, all those kind of things. So what do you have in your box?
So we have like the little flashy lights that you can carry around. They're like really tiny, you can flash them on. She's got that. She's got her chewy bracelet. She's got like an elastic that she can just pull.
Okay.
Therapy. So that's what the OT suggested, and you go up a different phase as the more pressure she needs.
Okay.
So, but do not drop it on your trousers, or don't forget.
It would be no good in my house. It would get thrown.
Come off. I learned once, I forgot, and I put it on my trousers and it didn't come off. It literally just like super glue. So yeah, and so she's got all these, so she's got all that in there, and she's got like I'm trying to think now, you've asked me, and trying to think on the
Have you ever seen that? I think that's actually, is that called Therafoam? It's like little tiny, it looks like small balls of polystyrene.
Yeah.
But it sort of all glues together. So you can use it the same as Play-Doh, because you can like chop it up and cut it up and you know, mold it into stuff, but it's got none of the mess of Play-Doh.
yeah. So yeah, she's got that, and she didn't like the smell of Play-Doh, to be honest. She's got a squeezy thing as well to squeeze. And then she's got like a worry monster, because she worries a lot. So actually it's the Mr. Maker shapes.
Okay.
So when she's got a worry, we kind of write it down, and then
you put it in.
Yeah. And then it's trying to get her to forget her worries, so before she goes to bed, so she can sleep okay, because if not, she has those anxieties at night. But that's really hard, because then we have to remember we take it out before she wakes up the next morning, and sometimes it's been very close. We're actually, oh quick, we've got to distract her because I've got to take it out, or you know, my mum's forgot to take it out.
It sounds a bit like the tooth fairy in my house. She just got sacked recently. My kids decided she was rubbish, so
but I take these things also when we go out, because I've got a really heavy rucksack and everyone laughs, but it's like taking the kitchen sink, because I know if I've got these things, she may not want it on that day, but it's there available for her.
Yeah, and actually, do you not find that just knowing that they're there, knowing they're available, is part of it, isn't it? It's part of the kind of scaffolding, being able to provide that reassurance that it's here. If you need it, you can access it. And invariably 9 out of 10 times they don't need to that day. Exactly. If you forget it, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, and it's something that you said, Ali, which about the dummy. So my daughter sometimes will need the baby bottle, because she never really took to it when she was young because of all the feeding problems in the tube. Sometimes she even asks for it now, and we've got it there. And if she wants it, we've got no problem. We let her have it. We don't care about what anybody else thinks and whether it's right or whether it's wrong. Because of the whole attachment and what our children have been through, we know that they just need to reattune, and they need that feeling. And sometimes she'll say to me and my mum, can I curl up in your lap? And, you know, and we'll feed her that. And that's absolutely fine, because we know that she needs to feel safe, and that reattunement and that.
Yeah. And it's really common for our kids to sort of almost want to relive some of that stuff that they didn't get the opportunity to, or, you know, it was at the wrong time in their development, because even though they might have been a 6-month-old baby, actually there was things going on, and developmentally they weren't at those points. So yeah, totally go with, you know, being able to have your children act out in a way, but it's not acting out, because for them it's completely real at that point, and that's what they need to align themselves. So I was just wondering, what were maybe some of the challenges in putting the book together? So you'd started off with one blog, then you'd ended up with 9. What were the
it's so easy to say what the challenge was, because actually when I wrote the blog, I had no intended audience. I know it's for my friends, but obviously they're all different. When it came to the book, I had like a writer's block, because I felt I couldn't write freely. So for me, that was really, really hard, because it was like I felt the pressure on me. Whereas before I was writing a blog and I didn't care. It was just an open from the heart. But then I thought it became a bit more serious. I was also very mindful of what I put in there, because actually it's my words. So I'm seeing it, Layla's life, through my eyes. And there were some things I didn't want to put in the book, which I know a lot of parents would benefit from. But I thought, out of respect and for privacy for Layla, I didn't.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'll just mention briefly, so it might be her her personal things for personal care and things like that. So I didn't mention it in there, but what I will say is we've made a lot of progress from where it's been, and yeah. But you know, I'm happy if anyone wanted to ask me, you know, I know you're going to put a link up on that page if they message me and they wanted to know how we've got to that stage.
Yeah.
Then
so we're going to share in the chat the link to your blog page, so people can go and read what started the book, and and is the book, and it's available on Amazon, isn't it? So
yeah, available on Amazon.
That's got to be quite exciting in itself, to say I am a published author.
I find it really hard to digest with those words, because I feel like
you feel like an imposter. Have you got imposter syndrome here?
Yeah, just because obviously I wrote the book for, like I said to you, it was for different intentions. And then I'm really mindful, because obviously the book, or, you know, I always say it as well whenever I speak to people, it's not to make money, it's to create the awareness. And people always ask me, like, you know, how much you're making from it. And if I'm really honest from you, it's like 9p. If anyone buys it, it's 9p. I'd make 9p profit, because for me, it was just to cover the cost, because I don't want to make money on my daughter.
Yeah,
it was just to create the awareness of it.
Yeah. So it's creating awareness around FASD. So obviously, you know, you and I were chatting before we came on this evening. We were like, well, you know, we're living it, we're we're doing it every day, and there's things that people don't see outside the home often with our kids, and our kids are really good chameleons as well, to be able to change to the environment they're in, but home is their safe base and where they can let it all out. But I'm sure that there's things that you learned about yourself, and what was that reflective process? But you mentioned there about using this as an opportunity to raise awareness about FASD. So what is it that you would want people to know about FASD?
So what I would want people to know, I think the challenges that our children have to go through, people look at our children, assume and think there's nothing wrong because they look okay, because in people's heads, they judge a book by its cover. They expect a disability to be a certain type. And actually they need to be really open-minded and actually start listening to parents who kind of living this experience with their children.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want people to kind of understand with it is, I kept saying to, like, my school, is don't think she won't, it's because she can't. Yeah. And I kept drumming that in, and I had this on her folder, her communication book. It was stuck right there so they could see it every day, because they thought she was just a spoiled little brat, or like, not her recent one-to-one, but her previous one-to-ones I've had, you know, like, oh, she can do this, but she won't do it. And I want people to also not judge, because I know that some mums might not want to come forward because fear of being judged as well. And it shouldn't be about that. No, we shouldn't be judging mums. You know, some people don't realize actually what drinking to do to their baby. It's not their fault. Some didn't even know they were pregnant. And I really want to get that message home as well. That's not what it should be about. It should be how can we help these families, rather than judging. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so that was for me, to create the awareness, to get it out there of what our children have to go through, and not think, oh, well, that's really silly because I've changed. For example, giving an example, like, we've changed PE today and we're doing this today. Oh, does it really matter? Yes, it does matter for our children. It's a big change and they struggle. And if we don't give them the support they need now, as they get older, which is why quite a few of them end up in the criminal justice system, because they're not understood, they're not heard by professionals. They feel, they feel misunderstood, they feel, is it them? And I think we as a society need to take ownership that how can we help these children? Because absolutely.
And we're talking a lot of kids, potentially like 3 to 5% of the general population, and in the care experience that's significantly higher. One study showing that 75% of children going for an adoption panel had got a prenatal alcohol history. Doesn't mean by any stretch that all of those children are going to end up with an FASD diagnosis, but they've been impacted all the same. A diagnosis is a threshold, and you've got to meet the threshold to get it, but you're still impacted. That doesn't take that away. And yeah, completely. I think for me, it's sort of around society's relationship with alcohol as well. And through the pandemic, we've seen Scotland sort of reports about more drinking, and there's lots of things of people have done self-pouring tests and things in the past. None of us probably are going to pour a standardized glass of whatever alcoholic in our home that you would buy over a pub counter. So yeah, there's and we use alcohol for all sorts of things, don't we? Celebrating, commiserating, Friday night, whatever. Not me personally, because I don't really drink, but that, you know, sort of has come along with the job, I have to say. But earlier in a different world, maybe. But yeah. So I loved what you said about, you know, being able to celebrate our kids' successes, because I think it is that whole, you know, it's not that they won't do something, it's, you know, that they can't right at that minute, but maybe they could have early today, maybe they can tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think that, and that's what people kind of need to remember, that actually they forget they need a lot of repetition, and what they can't do today they might be able to do tomorrow, and what they can do today they might not be able to do tomorrow, and that's okay.
Yeah,
I think, and just reassuring them. I'll give you a really good example of celebrating, for example, you know, the rewards, and it is part of her home education, and it is part of Layla's self-regulating to burn off her steam. For her physio is I've been teaching her to play tennis.
okay.
And it's been really good for her coordination, because as we know, some children with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder have problems with coordination, and that has been one of Layla's. And I thought, she's seen me play it, and she said, you know, can I try? And I was like, yeah, okay, let's go for it. And it's been a whole year, and we've been doing things slowly, but what I've learned from it is, how can I get her to a place where actually she's confident and it doesn't affect her self-esteem? And that's what we've really had to work on. And so, you know, it'd be like throwing a ball in the racket to get her to hit it, or hitting against the wall. You know, now we can go to the court. So actually we just go to the it's like a ball court. So obviously there's no nets, but it's just a ball court. But slowly she's now able to do a rally. And what I do is even if I know I can hit the ball, I'll miss it on purpose, because I want her to know, actually, all of us as adults or children can miss things, can lose things, can make mistakes. We're all human.
Yeah.
And as I was saying to you, Ali, before, there's this phrase that I saw, and I just really love it. So many of us use, even, you know, me growing up, it's quite normal. We always say, like, practice makes perfect, but what is perfect? None of us is perfect. And I always say now to Layla, practice makes progress.
Yeah.
And when she does something like in her tennis now, she can do a rally, and she feels so proud if she aces me, and I'll run and I go, oh, but you know what, I missed it because you were just so good, you know, and I'll make sure she realizes. So then she knows, actually, I'm praising her even though I've lost, so that she can do it to me. So it's modeling that behavior.
Yeah.
And I'll say, see, practice makes progress. And she'll say, now, if I keep practicing, I'll make the progress. And it's just saying these little things throughout, just using those opportunities so that they can remember, and that they can then start applying it to themselves and start believing in themselves, I think.
I absolutely love that. Practice makes progress. You'll be seeing it on our as quoted by Shushma. I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, and that's such a, because it's not saying that you've got it right. It's not saying you're perfect. It's not saying that you have to keep trying until you're perfect. It's just everything you're doing is progress. And it's celebrating every little step along the way, isn't it?
It's the progress, not the outcome. It's just so important. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, one of our hashtags this year is FASD, think differently. And you know, that is a real thing that we're trying to sort of get across, is that we've actually got to change our lens. It's not our kids, because we need to see it through their lenses, and you know, change the way that we are viewing it rather than them. So I absolutely love that. Practice makes progress. Brilliant. I was just looking to see if anybody's got any questions here, but I'm not seeing any. So I'm just going to remind those listening to us that if you've got anything that you'd like to jump in with, then please do. But I have got a few more questions here for Shushma. So what are the key things then that you think, writing this book? I was asking you before about how has that changed you, or what has the process been for you, and that reflectiveness?
So I think, like, for me, as I was saying to you before, so I used to be like a special needs teacher. You know, we've had experience ourselves as a family, special needs. But having Layla has really opened my eyes to a different part of special needs. And I think writing this book, what I've really learned is that I'm not patient. I'll put my hands up. I've really had to choose my battle. My mum is a lot more patient than me, and you know, I'm lucky that I have someone to say, actually, you need to step back, not in front of Layla, because then there's not that division, but afterwards have someone to kind of say, you know what, you shouldn't have said that, or shouldn't have done this, which is good because it's what I need. And so writing this book, I've really learned more about myself, about talking to myself more, and trying to think of it, what you said, Ali, through Layla's eyes, thinking, oh, actually, step back, what you're doing, she just regulated because of this, she just needs a hug. Or Layla has a different kind of cry when she's upset. When it's a different kind of cry, I know actually she's very dysregulated and she needs that hug. She needs to reattune, she needs to reconnect, she needs to know she's loved. And in that moment, it doesn't matter what she's done. We'll just forget that bit and we'll just reconnect, and actually we'll come back to when she's ready to reflect. That's been really hard for me. You know, I put my hands up for that. And I'm, you know, I'm much, I'd say from last year, I'm much better at this year completely. But, you know, I think what we have to remember as parents, as families, actually, it even depends on the day. You might be tired, something might have gone wrong, and all that impacts on you. You know, we're human.
Definitely, like we're human too, aren't we? We've got our own triggers, we're carrying our own baggage, you know, and we need to be mindful of that. And it is that having, I mean, you know, in our house we have a sort of like, you know, sometimes it's a bit tag team. So you can hear something and you're like, oh, okay, or you can just see on the other person's face, shall I be taking over here? Shall I, you know? In fact, yesterday I was sat doing some work and I got a phone call from my husband, and he was just like, yeah, maybe you could come to the bathroom. And I got there and he was sat on the floor, and young man was stood up in the bath, and I was like, okay, I'm here. And he was like wet because the bath water is over him rather than where it should have been in the bath. And just a change of adult. We had a lovely bath time, we did all the things we needed to do, we went and we followed on with bed, but it needed a change of adult, and that was fine, and that was what we did, and that was us giving that scaffolding and helping to support. So I've got a question here for you. It's a really interesting question. Somebody saying they'd be interested to hear about the difference between a trauma-informed approach and an FASD approach. At school, for therapy, and at home. Wow, that's quite a question.
That is quite a question. So I think, like for me personally, I've incorporated both. I'll speak about the attachment first. So my mum did a 12-week attachment training, and then I was working full-time at the time, and my mum said to me, you need to go on this. 100%, you need to do this, you'll understand and you'll just get it and you'll see things differently. Layla had just come to us then, so it was all a bit new, and so I went on it, and for me that was a turning point, because it was like, okay, we don't do things the traditional way. And when I say the traditional way of, you know, your children do something wrong, you tell them off, there's consequences, it just made me look at things through a completely different light. It taught me about how the brain is rewired if trauma happens, and that was a game changer for me. So once I started seeing things differently, I then understood why, because a lot of people are going to say, well, you've had her from birth, she's going to be fine, you know, she's in a loving home. You know, we've had obviously I can't really speak a lot, but we've had, you know, another child who was much older, and they said because of that age they will be fine because you've got them at a young age, and don't worry, you know, everyone thought it was a magic wand, and actually by doing that training we realized that, don't get me wrong, they will make progress, but you need to put strategies in place, and sometimes those strategies won't work, but we're giving them the tools so that they can have that fulfilled life. So, but again, I think the two are kind of similar, I think, and the reason why I say they're similar is because they need a lot of visuals, our children, whether it's attachment and whether it's fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. Our children need to know what's happening. Both cause anxiety, and it causes a lot of mistrust. They don't know what's happening on both sides. They need to know what's happening. They need to know, can I trust that person? Are they actually gonna say what they do? Because I think, especially with Layla, if she knows the boundaries and the structure, she can trust those people. And that's the same with the trauma base. If it's followed through, like in school, if someone says they're going to do something, they need to do it. They can't say, well, actually, this has happened, so it hasn't happened. School really need to understand it's so important, whether it's fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, whether it's even autism, to be honest, or any additional.
The whole transition is it's massive, isn't it? Yeah,
it's massive. But yeah, exactly. But I think what they need to understand with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, the difference is our children do forget.
Yep.
They need repetition. What they may remember today, they may forget tomorrow. And that's really, really important, because you know, in schools, they might come at a topic, they might teach it at a pace that isn't for our children. But then they think because they've covered that topic, they don't go back to it.
Yep.
And then our children are expected to remember it, and our children can't remember it.
It's like, it's the repetition, it's the relearning as well, actually.
Learning.
And I think what I've found as well is learning in depth about something, which maybe is one of my bugbears in mainstream, is that everything's done at quite a superficial level often. When my eldest was home educated and went back into mainstream education, she was frustrated by the fact that we never spend very long on anything, mummy, you know, whereas at home we had hours and hours and weeks that we could do, you know, Queen Anne or whoever it was, or whatever the subject was, you know, the life of a butterfly or whatever. Whereas it's, you know, maybe half a week and then they're on to the next thing. And
exactly.
But they might redo it again at a later stage, but sometimes it's still too. So yeah, it's the repetition isn't enough all at the same time often, and that's what definitely in my family is what's worked, is that repetition and the depth that you go to. Yeah,
exactly. And I agree with you. And that's that scaffolding, using it at their level, at their base, rather than chronological age. Has to use it at where they are emotionally as well. I think people forget, whether just because she's 7 and she might tick some boxes for a 7-year-old, emotionally she's not, my daughter's not at that age. And so we really need to make sure we're meeting their emotional needs before they can start learning. And that's what I learned last year, because even though Layla had a full-time one-to-one, if she was struggling with work, they would take her out. That just didn't work, because then Layla was like, well, now all my peers know that I can't do the work. Now I feel stupid because they can do the work. And is it because I'm naughty? Is it because I'm stupid? Is it because they don't want me in the classroom? And then they'd see the disruptive behavior. And so we've had to get her at the emotional level, meeting her emotional needs, meeting that first before we could even get to the stage of learning.
Definitely. And that's about, as you said before, security, you know, kind of meeting the developmental needs, meeting the emotional needs, meeting, you know, the fact that our kids struggle with just remembering like steps of processes, how I put my coat on, you know, that there's a whole step process for putting your coat on and doing your zip up, and for some of them that just becomes a bit slower. It doesn't mean they're never going to be able to do it. It just takes that little bit of time. It's that whole thing about practice makes progress. As you, I love that phrase. That's great. So we've talked quite a bit there about some of the different strategies that you use at home, and I've kind of thrown in a few of mine as well. And I'm just looking here for, what do you think, or what you're hoping would be the impact of your book going out and being read by all sorts of people, hopefully?
I think they're making a difference in their practice. I think we as families have a lot on our plate. We're going through so much. And I think if professionals just listen and are supportive, that really helps us as families and helps the child. Because then it feels that your child is being understood and listened to. So that's what I'm really hoping, because obviously I've got feedback from professionals that I don't know, and for them they've said, I mean, they, you know, like the head teachers and stuff, and they've said actually it's like a slap in the face for them because it's been an eye-opener, but in a good way. So I've said it apparently in a nice way about how school systems need to change. And I think if people start changing their practices, only then can our children thrive in schools. And it's no disrespect to teachers, because I've been a teacher. I know how much pressure they're under. I know what's involved. 30 children in one class. so that, and even I have to say, even the school that my daughter was in was such a good school that I was even thinking, should I take her out or not? Because actually, if I take her out and it goes wrong, I don't want to lose that school, because it is a good school. And actually, if my daughter didn't have any additional needs, I would choose that school for mainstream, because the head teacher is amazing. She would always listen to me. Her door was open, but it's just the school system just doesn't work for my child.
Yeah.
And even now I've had a conversation, you know, with the hospital she's at. She sees a psychologist for her cystic fibrosis because it's quite isolating. And even she said, you know, she could see the changes, and don't listen to anyone, she said to me, because you've got out of a place. And if she was to go back to school in September, because I bet everyone's asking you, is she going to go back? And they are. You'll lose all that hard work, because everyone thinks that she's fixed, and it doesn't work like that.
No.
So you need people on your
and you know, I think we've always approached it a year on year. So I've got 3 kids, one in full-time, back in full-time school, mainstream school, one who's like, I'm home educating for my life. That's what she's, you know, we keep asking, she's like, no, I'm happy here, thanks. And then one who will be going to school, but just for a couple of days a week. So it'll be like a flexi arrangement.
Okay, yeah.
So, you know, we're I think as a family, we're now going to experience it all 3 different ways almost. But I think that's the thing. It's developed as they've developed, and it's meeting each child's needs, isn't it? And I think that's the thing to remember about FASD. It is a spectrum. It's in the name. And so therefore, every single individual on that spectrum is different, unique, just as our families are as well. So I totally hear what you're saying. Although, you know, obviously, personally an advocate for home education, totally, schools, you know, have, and through COVID, obviously, that's been a really tough road for a lot of teachers, a lot of teaching staff. A lot of expectations put on people, and that, you know, that can't not feed through to the kids either. So,
no, exactly. Yeah. And you know, speaking of that, you know, that obviously the school was sending work that wasn't for Layla, so I was honest and said, I'm not doing any of that. I'm not even going to go down that road, because it just won't work for her. And she was really struggling in year 1. We could just see it, the school could just see it. And actually, there was so already talks with the psychologist. She was the only one that really understood me, to be honest. She's amazing. And that's why I say professionals, if you have someone who listens and understands. She was like, let's get this assessment for autism and ADHD. So she realized she could see that she had that as well. But she's like, let's just wait, because everyone will go, oh, you know what, she'll grow out of it. And then hopefully that will open the doors and people might sit up and understand. For me, though, I was like, okay, fine. But for me, it was also, why do they have to get like an autism diagnosis for people to sit up? Why can't people just understand about the fetal alcohol spectrum disorder? Because
absolutely.
so now she can go to a specialist school with an autism provision, but actually it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that for our children. The awareness needs to be out there.
Yeah, totally. And their needs are different as well too. You know, some of the strategies that would work for those who are on the ASD spectrum, and that is their condition that totally, you know, been assessed, and that's right for them.
Yeah.
But actually for children with FASD, some of those strategies won't work. Some of the things that you've mentioned wouldn't work for my son.
Exactly.
And that's like the difficulty. You have to get to know the individual child.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ali. It's so individual, actually. And today something might work with Layla and tomorrow it won't.
Yeah.
And it's so individual.
Yeah. So it's, I think as parents, it's just soaking in as much as we possibly can, and like filling up our toolbox of stuff that we can try at home that will work with our kids. And obviously some of the things that we've talked about tonight are going to work for other people's children as well. And it's definitely worth, you know, looking for at FASD Hub Scotland. We're bringing out a set of education resources and fact sheets at the end of this month, and some of those are around strategies for parents and carers, and we're developing our strategies kind of resources as well. So people should look out for those, because as you know, many people will be on their journey back into mainstream school full time, and that's going to be a big change for people.
One thing and it's a brand new thing, and I forgot the name of it because I've literally just got it on the weekend. I've just started using it with Layla, but it's like a breakdown board.
Oh yeah, was this through FASD, me and my FASD?
Yeah. And that's really good, because we can talk about the positives as well as the things that haven't gone wrong. And my daughter's really taken to it. because she can see actually some of the stuff, like we say, in the toolbox of what strategies that we may not have tried is in there, and things that she can reflect on herself. So she really loves the bit about what am I good at and what can I do, and yeah, and so we've used that quite a bit actually. So she's done it when things have gone really well, and things where I've said, actually, why do you think this has happened? Do you think? And then she'll look and go, oh yeah, that's an actually, I think it was that. So
cool.
yeah,
I've ordered mine, so mine's not arrived yet, so I'm looking forward to seeing. We'll maybe have to do another one of these in 3 months, and then we can compare notes.
yeah.
How did you get on? Yeah. Definitely.
So yeah.
I know something I found really helpful has been NVR, connective parenting.
Oh, yes.
So if you've ever come across Sarah Fisher, so I found that really helpful for sort of having that framework for me, actually. It's not really anything to do about my children. For me, for NVR is all about how I respond, my responses, what is my toolkit. Things go wrong in life, things go wrong in families, but how can you pick it back up, and how can you resolve, and how can you repair? So that's another kind of a strategy, but really a reflective strategy for parents, making those connections with their children and building those relationships is a really good thing. So I'm just going to see if there are any other somebody's just saying it's called the breakdown board, which it is. Thanks for that. So I'm just wondering if anybody else has got any questions they'd like to ask Shushma, and conscious of the time here this evening.
I can see there's one question actually, that about memory.
Is that in the Q&A?
From Susan.
Yeah, there's a question about do you have any thoughts as to how to improve child's memory? My child has a shocking memory. The question in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, so for memory, I would say repetition, routine, and structure. So I'll give you an example. We do things where you can, because obviously the pressure, it's overwhelming. So everything with my daughters is where she needs it. So her slope board where she needs it for writing is where it is. So she needs it, she goes and gets it. She knows where her coat is. She will forget things. She does forget things every day, and that's fine. But things where we can help her, it's jotted around. So her weighted blanket is there, and she might have something and she might forget where she's put it, and I'll just say, oh, remember, it doesn't go there. I think it will go there, because then it'll be really hard for mummy to look for it later. And that's the kind of things I do to try to remind her memory. But she's got like a box for her shoes, so she knows where her shoes are, because otherwise her shoes would just be everywhere around the house and then she wouldn't be able to find it. She's got all her pencils and crayons and her colouring books in one place, and it's just there. Like, I've got mindfulness sheets where I've just printed off, and if she wants to colour it, it's there. So it's kind of, we've just got things in the same place. And I try and keep top of most of it. Sometimes it does get out of place, you think, oh, where's that gone? But I think in order to help her to remember, it's just doing things every day. So the calendar, we do the same thing, we do it at the same time as well. So we get up, she'll have a med, she knows what's expected, and she'll say, oh, I need my medicine. So then she will then remind me if I forget, because it's kind of, I don't know if drummed in is the right word, but it's that routine of repetition.
Yeah, routine,
yeah, of every day it's happening. The shower, and this is what happens, and then I wash my hair last, and then this is what happens afterwards. And so then, because she knows it's a routine, and then we go and play tennis at the same time every day at 7 o'clock, she knows that's what we're doing, and that's routine, and that's how she remembers. And I do warn her if things are going to be different. So tomorrow I'll be like, oh, we can't play tennis first thing, because actually mummy's got to do this, or uncle's going to take you tomorrow. So then she remembers when things are different. So that's how we try and help her. Things where she might get really anxious, where I don't try and make her remember, is like needles and things. If I know she's going to happen tomorrow, I'll make sure the hospital know what they need to do, but I talk to her in the car about it, so then she can have a good night's sleep and though she's not anxious, so she doesn't eat. But I would say repetition is the key. If you can, try and keep in the same routine and structure where it is possible, because obviously things do happen, and where you can't keep the routine, to try and just keep reinforcing it's going to be different.
Yeah. And I'd add to that and say, like, for slightly older children, most of them have got phones these days, using apps, using things like Alexa. So, you know, Alexa can tell your children, if you brushed your teeth, you need to put your shoes on. You can, you know, program all that in. So actually it's not even you nagging. It's this, you know, this voice that comes from nowhere who everyone obeys.
And alarm. We're saying, Ali.
Sorry?
Alarms. Like
Alarms, yeah, exactly. Alarms. Even things like, you know, a post-it note where you write it down and then they can go away, take the post-it note with them, tick it, or have it pinned on something and they come back and they're going to tick. So there's lots of different kind of I guess it's having aid memoirs, isn't it? And what I'm finding is the older the child gets, you know, they need to become a little bit more subtle, because it's all right us having all that stuff at home, having it in the shower, like remember to wash under your armpits and, you know, all that kind of thing. But when they're at school, they want it to be less obvious. So I think things at school, often schools these days have things like iPads, so where a child could be able to get access to the teacher. They have, like, my child anyway is able to kind of just press a button on her iPad and that pings into the teacher's iPad. So it's not even having to put my hand up because I don't understand a word of what you've just said. So there are some kind of really cool technological things that you can use for the older kids as they get older as well. So I'm hoping that's helped that person to answer some of those questions. She's saying she appreciates that, so that's good.
You made me smile, actually, because the other day my daughter got new shoes, so she knows obviously once she walks out in them outside, she can't wear them in the living room because of her CF and trying to keep things sterile. And so she said to me, you know, I forget, mummy. So I think if you put like a little sign near my shoes, so bless her, even though she won't be able to read it, she knows that will be her memory to remind her, you know, I forget things. So if you put it next to my shoes, I'll see it and it will remind me once I've worn them outdoors not to wear them in the living room. And that made me smile, because actually she knows she'll forget and she's preempting.
And she's finding strategies for herself. So how great is that?
And
making progress. I love that. It's brilliant. Yeah. So I'm just going to ask the audience if anyone's got any last questions that they would like to ask, or not, because my last question is, so if you could take one thing for the future for those individuals and their families seeking FASD diagnosis, what would be the one thing that you would change?
I'd want there to be a team of professionals around. So I was just saying, like you guys have got in Scotland. So I want there to be a pathway easy for families to get that diagnosis. So there's a pathway that if professionals think that the child may have fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, what that pathway looks like. So it's easy for those parents, rather than having to advocate or trying to justify or trying to look for the evidence. And that there's a team that can do that assessment locally. And I would love it in every borough if that was possible. So that you can just tap into, the GP can then refer and say, oh, actually, this is what I think, or, you know, or whoever can then just tap into that. And afterwards, so actually, yes, you've got that diagnosis, but where do parents go from there?
Yeah.
To have that, you know, like when you're struggling and you want strategies, you want help, you don't know what to do, you know, school this, there's a team of people that you can say, actually, I need advice on this or that, or put me in touch with this parent or whatever.
Yeah. So I just see somebody's popped it up about the nice quality sound. I feel like I can take a magic wand and say your wish will become true, Shushma, because in England you will get the nice quality standards in relating to FASD this year, all being well, and that will bring a pathway in England, which will be great news for everybody there. So I'm sure it will take some time for those things to get embedded, but I'm sure that will make a huge difference to a lot of families. And I agree with you around like the actual evidence. I think for families in particular who have got care experienced kids, who, you know, we're relying on somebody else having written it down. And for us that have got any child that was born before it became the chief medical officer's advice that you shouldn't drink during pregnancy, then, you know, it wasn't on the onus of anybody write, and it would be quite difficult, actually. It would have been quite difficult at that point for people to be putting that down without huge amount of evidence. So, but that obviously makes it difficult when we're coming to diagnosis, because that is needed, unless there is the full facial features and no genetic, other causes, then the only reason could be alcohol exposure. So yeah, we've still got a progress to go, haven't we, in all of the nations of the UK, and Scotland are held up of being, ahead, and we have been to this point. But I'm sure that I would like to see that in 5 years time, everywhere would be different. Wales will have got themselves guidance and strategies and pathways, and I think having services like ourselves and many of the other FASD support services around as well is fantastic and exciting for families, and it's about connecting that communities together. So thank you so much. I'm not seeing any other questions coming in, but we have reached almost our hour mark. So I think our style of having a chat with two new friends has gone well, and I hope you've enjoyed just reflecting on writing your book. And I know that there's a few people saying in the chat here that they've really enjoyed it, and somebody had already gone out and bought it, so that's good news.
Thank you.
Got another 9p for a bag of sweets, Millie. So I'll just ask you finally, Shushma, is there anything else that you would like to say to anybody listening?
I just want to say thank you to everyone that that's come along and listened, because I know obviously, especially the families, because obviously we all have busy lifestyles. So yeah, thank you just for listening, and thank you for buying the book. I appreciate it. And obviously together, I just want to say we're stronger. We're more powerful with a voice together, all of us, definitely, and believe in yourselves. Definitely. Perfect. Thank you so much for your time this evening. Please hang on, and we'll say goodbye to everybody else. But thank you so much for all those that have come and listened this evening, and watched us, those that have been able to watch visually. And as I said, that this is being recorded, so it will be made available on our YouTube channel, and we'll share that through social media. So feel free to share that afterwards. But thank you for joining us for our first Wednesday webinar of our season 2 in 2021. And good night, everybody.